Hey everyone, today I want to talk about the new cards that were just revealed in the Journey to Un'Goro live stream with Peter Whalen and Day 9. Amusingly enough, I was actually just playing Peter Whalen's game Dream Quest on my entire flight to and from South by Southwest, where I was for a day, and it's a really good game if you haven't checked it out. That was actually the game that kind of brought him to the attention of the Hearthstone team. They're all big fans of it, so if you haven't tried that, I highly suggest you check it out. It's very cool. But anyway, let's just get right into the cards themselves. Arcanologist, this is the new Mage 2-drop. Kind of like a new version of a Mad Scientist. A 2/3 for 2 that has Battle Cry, draw a secret from your deck. Obviously a lot less powerful than Mad Scientist because you're not getting the mana discount of just putting the card directly into play. But it has, just a lot of utility in any kind of deck that's using secrets, frankly. I think this could be a very powerful card in a control mage deck that's looking to get value out of the early game minions it wants to play to defend itself against opposing early game minions. Be able to have more shots at a single ice block in your deck, or just more shots at whatever secrets are in your deck. You could have an ice block, an ice barrier, and 2 of these and have a lot of access to those defensive cards, which is very, very powerful. So I think that there is definitely a home for this in a controlling or mid-range style of mage deck, and I would definitely expect this card to see play. Next up, we have Dinosize. First of all, this card is hilarious. I love the artwork with the tiny little Murloc just becoming absolutely gigantic. And I think this is more of just kind of a card that's this funny concept of something becoming, dinosaur-sized. I don't expect this to be a particularly high-level competitive card, though it does have, potentially some fringe uses. It is, essentially, if you're able to stick a single small minion on the board, it is kind of like a 10 attack, 10 health minion for 8 that effectively has charge, because if you have just a Silverhand Recruit that's remained in play from the previous turn, it's really powerful. It's also worth noting this doesn't overwrite the existing minion. If you have a minion that has Divine Shield or somehow Wind Fury in Paladin, any ability remains with it. It's effectively a Keeper of Oldemon effect that goes to 10 rather than a 3/3, and that's a really big deal when it can stick to the minion's existing abilities. So I don't really expect this to be a high-level competitive card, but I can definitely see uses for it in certain fringe decks, and if nothing else, just to make gigantic Murlocs, as the image suggests. Next up, we have probably my favorite card in the set, which is Elise the Trailblazer. I think that the concept of a card that directs you to this future goal of, hey, I want to prolong this game, get to the point where I can get a big advantage if I'm able to survive to the point that I complete my quest, essentially. Previously it was, finding the map to the monkey. Now it is exploring Un'Goro and finding the various things from Un'Goro that you get to put right into your hand. When I actually originally saw this, before they showed how it worked on the stream, I thought it was just shuffle a pack into your deck, which was shuffle 5 cards in your deck. It kind of felt like a Prince Malchezaar, which seemed kind of unexciting and unimpressive. But when they showed that you actually get a card that is a pack, which is kind of like Packception, Cardception, what's going on here? I heard you like cards, so put cards in your card. You end up drawing the pack and then getting all the cards in your hand. And apparently Elise is, they said luckier than pretty much anyone, but not luckier than me. I'd probably actually get better packs than Elise does, just given my track record. But you get 5 cards, guaranteed to have at least 1 epic and a very high incidence of legendaries as well. And even if you weren't getting legendaries and epics, just getting 5 cards, essentially, shuffle, draw 5 cards into your deck. It's very, very, very powerful. And it's not actually draw 5 cards because they're cards created from outside the game, so it doesn't impact your vulnerability to fatigue in long games. So I expect this to be a card that I play with a lot. It's super, super fun looking, and also looks very powerful in any kind of deck that's looking to have an attrition style of game plan. That said, it's not clear how powerful that style of game plan will be in a world where Jades are a major feature, and we'll see if that's actually able to be a viable style of deck given the metagame moving forward. But it's definitely a card that I'm looking forward to trying out, and I hope it works because it's exactly the kind of card I love. All right, next up, speaking of exploring Un'Goro, we have the card Explore Un'Goro. Ta-da! This is another really neat card. This is kind of a Renounce Darkness style of card. It's weird to me that this is a warrior card, which, by the way, I didn't know until they mentioned on the live stream that it's a warrior card, because I'm colorblind and can't really tell just by looking at the borders of spells what class they often belong to. I was like, is this a rogue card? It's just very strange that this is a warrior card. What do warriors have to do with discovering things? What do warriors have to do with exploring? What do warriors have to do with getting rid of your deck? I don't know. It feels like they picked a class for it to go in because it had to go into a class. And that from a design perspective is a little bit disappointing to me, because it feels like, other than warriors are a class that are going to play a long game, and thus discovering all your cards, like, it just kind of mechanically fits into what a warrior deck's trying to do rather than what warriors do, which feels different to me. Regardless, it's another, I think, super fun card along the lines of the original Elise Starseeker, along the lines of Renounce Darkness, that creates this very different play experience once you actually do it. It's pretty crazy that it's so immediate and actually pretty powerful. You compare it to, say, Renounce Darkness, where Renounce, you lost your hero power, you got like totally random cards. Yes, they were reduced in cost, but you lost a lot of flexibility. This gives you more flexibility at the cost of efficiency, because you have to pay 1 for your discover mechanism that every card turns into. It's kind of like that brawl where every card in your deck was discover a card, except it was discover one of these few cards in your deck. This is just discover any card. And I assume that this is a class card or a neutral card with weight toward class cards. And you can't get cards from other classes because it didn't explicitly say that, and historically, unless it explicitly said, Discover generally only allowed you to get cards from your own class. So no like wild shenanigans of getting 2 different class cards together through Explore Un'Goro. But overall, I think this is a card that will be really neat and give people opportunities to play this sort of wacky off-the-wall decks that will make for excellent YouTube highlights. So expect some Explore Un'Goro coming to you soon. Next up, we have the Golakka Crawler. And this is a card that I'm not sure how I feel about it, because this is such a heavy-handed kind of design. This is basically like, we screwed up with our game balance, and now we made this because our game balance is messed up. Which, on the one hand, I get, because you don't want to go and have to react to the problems that you created by like having tons of heavy-handed nerfs and changes and whatever. But this just feels like the sort of card that feels bad when you're playing Pirates and your opponent has it, and it feels bad when you have it and your opponent isn't playing Pirates. Like, it's not a super low powered card if you're playing a deck that's using this and they don't have Pirates. It's a 2/3 for 2, which is bad, but it's not like embarrassingly bad. It's not a useless card. And frankly, this is a card that you could easily just play in a Hunter deck, which tends to be vulnerable to aggressive Pirate decks. And you're not playing against a Pirate deck. Sure, you just have a 2/3 beast that turns on Houndmaster, turns on Kill Command. Overall, I'm just hesitant when I see a card like this to feel happy about what's going on, even though I think, yeah, I'll play this in my Hunter deck, I'll play this in my Paladin deck, because it just represents like a philosophy of design and development that makes me uneasy. Particularly because Hearthstone isn't a game that has like sideboards. If Hearthstone were a game that at a competitive level had the option to sideboard, which for those of you who are not familiar, is a term coming from games like Magic the Gathering, where you have a selection of cards you can choose to bring into your deck between games of a match, which incidentally is a style of tournament format that I am debating running my own events for, just because I think it's an interesting style of play to explore. But that's kind of a different topic, but it's clearly related to Golakka Crawler. This is sort of the very high power level of the hate cards that we've seen come out of Team 5 and Hearthstone. There's cards like the Streetwise Investigator or Defias Cleaner. And I like cards like that kind of existing, but I feel like the world that they exist in needs to be such that they're relevant. A card like Defias Cleaner is hard to ever put into a deck, because it's a very narrow thing that you are often not going to get value for, and cards that you can put in your deck instead of that are so powerful that you're making a big sacrifice when you don't run into a deck that it's effective against. And the same thing with like Streetwise Investigator. You're getting a 4/6 for 5. Golakka Crawler is a better deal. You're getting a higher floor and a very high ceiling. You're getting a Totem Golem that doesn't have overload and kills an opposing minion. So that's pretty incredible when it is turned on. But both players involved in an exchange like kind of feel bad. Like the player who plays the Golakka crawler when their opponent doesn't have pirates, and the player who plays pirates and just gets their guy eaten by a Golakka crawler. Both those people I think are gonna be pretty miserable in terms of how this kind of like main deck hate card effectively works. I don't like seeing this as the direction that Hearthstone design takes to approach problems like the power level of a pirate deck, because it feels like the games that do involve this card with the pirate decks are just going to be like kind of blowouts where you get this incredibly overpowered effect, and you either have this card in your deck or you don't. And obviously that's a very blanket statement of you either have this card in your deck or you don't, but it doesn't feel like there's all that much interesting interaction going on. It's just the decision of whether you put that card there or not. We've seen a lot of this with cards like Eater of Secrets, cards like Kizan Mystic, and generally we haven't really seen those cards get a ton of play. This might be different because of just the sheer popularity of pirate decks right now, as well as just the raw power level of this effect in those games. But I do really hope that we see more cards that are kind of more open-ended ways of dealing with specific styles of problems, which we do see in the set, which we'll get to. In fact, I'll just go to the card that I think is a great example of the style of design that I think is good for this sort of answer strategy right now. So anyway, Golakka Crawler, big question mark in my mind as to just what I feel it represents for the Hearthstone design philosophy. It's obviously a very powerful card in the right context, but feels bad, man. All right, so I mentioned I wanted to go to a card that I really liked in terms of the kind of design that it represents, which is Tar Creeper. Tar Creeper, a 1/5 for 3 with Taunt, which gets +2 attack on your opponent's turn. This is the kind of card that I think is great in terms of giving players tools to deal with a particular style of deck. If you want to play defensive options that are very powerful against aggressive decks, but weak in other contexts, this is so much more elegant and so much cleaner in my mind than, hey, this eats a pirate because I'm losing to pirate decks. And I think that this is a great card at giving you the ability to answer rush decks, and that's really what Pirate Warrior is in a lot of ways, is just a rush deck, not really a pirate synergy deck in most ways. And it's so much broader, and you don't feel when you get a Tar Creeper played against you nearly as bad as if someone just eats your pirate with Golakka Crawler. That feels really bad, because you feel like you kind of just got matched up with the person who happened to have the card that's good against your deck. Obviously there's a lot of things like that in Hearthstone, like Harrison Jones or Acidic Swampoos, but they don't feel quite as backbreaking or as narrow in a lot of ways as the Galactic Crawler does. And Tar Creeper is just the perfect way to go about making cards that are very powerful in a particular context and weaker in others. So huge fan of Tar Creeper. I expect it will see lots and lots of play. And I really like seeing this kind of design direction from Team 5 and Blizzard in terms of answering specific types of decks and strategies. So getting back to alphabetical order, we have Lakkari Felhound. This is a really sweet card which goes very well with the quest, which we're going to get to in a moment. But again, I like that we're seeing more of these defensively oriented options for a variety of different decks that can help answer aggressive decks if they sort of do feel like they're getting out of hand. A 3/8 taunt for 4 is obviously extremely powerful. And then the battle cry of discard 2 random cards not only synergizes with a lot of the discard mechanics as well as the quest, which we'll get to in a moment, but also is obviously punishing toward a lot of the styles of decks which would naturally want to play this, which would be long game defensive decks. So, when you're playing, say, Handlock, Reno Lock style of deck, obviously Reno Jackson itself is leaving, but you can't just fit this in your long game singleton control style deck because, well, you could easily lose your key win conditions if you're trying to defend yourself with this card. So you need to rethink what you're doing and probably play a more proactive mid-range style of deck rather than a long game control deck that's always going to try and win with your access. So I really like this card, and I think that it's going to force players to kind of rethink what's going on in terms of the way that they're constructing their deck. And they will almost certainly, in many cases, be including this card, which goes very well with the Felhound. And that card is Lakkari Sacrifice. This is the Warlock quest, which is to discard 6 cards, and the reward is Nether Portal. And Nether Portal is this card, a 5-cost permanent that summons 3/2 imps every turn. And this is a super cool card in my mind for a couple of reasons. One, I think that it's a really neat quest objective and a really cool reward. Just generally, you're not just getting something which is like, okay, win the game on the spot or anything like that, but you are getting a totally new like type of card in Hearthstone, which is a permanent card. And this is really cool in my mind because it takes away some of the incredibly like sort of funneled axes of interaction that we see existing in Hearthstone quite a bit. If you are able to kill your opponent's minions, then you ultimately sort of snowball that advantage to killing your opponent, and everything is either like a minion, a weapon, or a Jiraxis. It's basically what it feels like in Hearthstone. So it kind of is a little bit jarring to me that this is another sort of inevitability win condition that exists in Warlock, as opposed to any of the other classes, which could use that style of thing. But I like the fact that this is the kind of card that they feel comfortable making now, which is not interactable through the basic axis of interaction in the game, and gives you something to build toward, and this goal to, okay, this is how I'm going to win the game. And I mentioned that with the Lakkari Felhound, you couldn't play a traditional style of just build up my answer cards in my hand and try to remove your stuff and then eventually win with these big powerful cards, but you can play it with Nether Portal, and I think that's a really interesting sort of departure from the general kind of strategy we've seen from controlling decks in Hearthstone in the past. So super excited for what this means for what the design team is open to doing now, creating a lot more design space in Hearthstone, which is a really good thing moving forward. And next up we have actually a very similar card in terms of creating a new sort of permanent type and a alternate way to win the game. The Sherazin Corpse Flower, which is a 5/3 for 4. Juggernaut, baby! If you're a Magic player, you get that reference. It has a death rattle of Go Dormant, and you play 4 cards as a turn to revive this minion. And I actually don't have an image of the sort of flower thing, hidden flower thing that it turns into when it dies, but it has like glowing leaves that show how many cards you've played in a given turn to help revive it. But I think this is a really neat card. I don't know how powerful this card is. It really depends, again, on how often you're going to have games that are attrition-based, because clearly this is a powerful card if you are fighting against just individual removal spells trying to kill your stuff. And it is not like a purely like long game attrition style card. It's kind of a tempo-y attrition card, because you obviously are not going to keep playing 4 cards in a turn and not just run out of cards. So I'm not really sure where this would have a home, but I much like the Nether Portal, think that the existence of this kind of permanent style of card is really interesting, and I'm excited to see both how this card finds a home as well as what other types of cards we see like this in the future. Next up we have one of my favorite cards that was revealed, Swamp King Dred, which is a 9/9 for 7. So we're getting pretty big here as far as just stats to mana cost, with the ability, after your opponent plays a minion, attack it. And this is just super cool. It's, you think of it as just the king of the dinosaurs roaming around Un'Goro Crater, just like smashing anything it comes upon. And even if the preview video that we saw had Swamp King Dred just munching on Tiny Fin after Tiny Fin, that makes me think he's a bad guy, because what kind of horrible monster would do that to poor Murloc Tiny Fin? But this is just the kind of card that I think is really interesting in a like mid-rangey to controlling style of Hunter deck, because Hunter isn't really like a board control class in terms of having great removal tools to kill all your opponent's stuff. It doesn't have good board clears. It doesn't have the most efficient minions, the most efficient spells. It doesn't have the most efficient almost anything, really. It's just a great button to shoot your opponent in the face. But I like the idea of the giant dinosaur that comes down and is bigger than anything that's going to come down around the same time, as a 9/9 for 7, and sort of hunts down all your opponent's minions. They play after the fact. So you're playing a control game in the sense that you're just getting a little bit ahead of your opponent, and that edge is allowing you to, sort of keep pressuring them, or in the case of Swamp King Dred, just keep eating everything they play. And I think this is a super cool card, and I'm definitely looking forward to building some mid-rangey Hunter decks, much like the ones I've been playing before. They'll probably have the crab to eat opposing pirates, even though I say, like, from a philosophical perspective, I don't like the crab. I'm definitely going to enjoy playing it to buy me time to get to Swamp King Dred and be, the king of the crater. Roar. And last but not least, We have Tortollan Shellraiser. This isn't the flashiest or most exciting of the cards that were revealed, but it is one of sort of the glue cards, the kind of brick and mortar style cards that I think are pretty powerful for certain archetypes and frankly for just Priest in general. Priest as a class really likes having high health minions. Having high health minions allows you to actually get board value out of your hero power, which is really important. It's one of the reasons that Dragon Priest is a powerful deck, is because you have these high health minions early in the game that you're able to establish and maintain their presence on the board and get actual impactful value out of your hero power by healing them. A lot of those dragons are going to be gone. Almost all of sort of the core elements of Dragon Priest are going to be moving to wild with the release of Journey into Un'Goro, which means that you're going to be looking to new cards, PogChamp, like Tortollan Shellraiser, to give you that board presence that you can preserve with your hero power. In addition to that, the Shellraiser is obviously very synergistic with the Awaken the Makers is the name of the quest, I think, that gives you the new school Super Reno, as well as very synergistic with N'Zoth. One of the things that you often find in N'Zoth decks is that you have a bunch of various death rattle things that have died, but you can't afford to play your N'Zoth late in the game because you're just going to die. A lot of N'Zoth decks would play like Infested Tauren, simply to have something that can defend them the turn that they play N'Zoth. So having access to a 2/6 taunt that can come back when you play your N'Zoth late in the game can really help you live through those late game assaults and give you enough time to take advantage of the rest of the death rattles that are brought back from your N'Zoth. And we haven't even gotten into the fact that it has a death rattle that gives a random friendly minion +1/+1. And that's, again, like not really a huge element of what makes the card powerful, but pumping up your existing minions, especially sort of mid-rangey minions with high health, is quite powerful for Priest, because the more you're able to establish a powerful board, the better value you're able to get from that hero power protecting it. All right, that is it for the cards that were revealed from Journey to Un'Goro from the live stream. Let me know what you think of the cards in the comments or in the chat if you're watching this live. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing more of the cards that will be revealed. They did mention on the stream that there were going to be more cards revealed at the upcoming Hearthstone Championship Tour in the Bahamas, and I'll be there. I don't know what any of those cards are yet, but I'm definitely looking forward to that. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. And yeah, see you next time.